Salutations, everyone! Welcome back to another Total Warhammer 3 guide. This time we're going to be covering Norsca. And before I get into this, I do want to preface this by the fact that Norsca is in desperate need of a rework. In fact, they just got patched in the first patch for the beta um, while I was in the middle of making the guide. So I had to redo it. So this is a take two. Anyway, this guide is going to be divided into several different chapters, which you should be able to click on below, where you'll be going over the faction, how they play, any concepts behind them, moving deeper into units, then the economy, then technology, and then finally the two lords and their starting locations. We'll probably go a little bit less into starting locations and moves than usual, just because I have a feeling that this area is going to change a lot. And before we get too far into this, if you enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell if you want more, and leave a comment. It's always nice hearing from people, especially if you have better strategies than I do. So, the concepts behind Norsca are pretty obviously the Vikings, Scandinavia. You are Chaos Worshippers, so you're working for the Chaos Gods. Not any particular one, just all of them undivided together, which means you're going to be dealing with a lot of chaos corruption and needing to spread it. Thankfully, you have plenty of tools to do so. So the first major mechanic you should see is up here. This is your allegiance to the gods. As you pick which god you're going to be dedicated to, the eagle, the hound, the serpent, or the crow, when you occupy a settlement, you have an option of raising it, or one of these deities occupying it, sacking it, and stuff. The short win condition is to attain allegiance level 2 with any god, and then the long one is hit level 3, along with slightly different here because of Wulfrik. So you basically want to pick which god you're going to dedicate yourself to, because you're only going to be able to fully commit to one. And they have a variety of different bonuses, so we'll just quick cover them. This one makes your infantry unit stronger, and at max level will give you experience and unlock a champion of Khorne. These are like legendary lord things. Over here, research rate and winds of magic. If you can use magic, this is kind of Zeech. Plus you get a lord as well. Over here, this is Nurgle, basically the champion of the crow. You'll get an unclean one. Wound recovery, your units will recover faster. You'll get a huge casualty replenishment, which you get from the beginning. And every one of these does give this income from port 60%. And then the final one will be upkeep reduction and lord recruit rank higher. This can be quite useful if you want immortal lords, or if you just want more armies on the map. In my experience, I really liked the increased casualty replenishment rate, but it was kind of a toss-up between that or the serpent. These two, as strong as they are, I honestly do not really advise them. Being able to have your armies fight more battles due to replenishment and having your characters on the map more, or having more cheaper armies led by better lords, outweighs research and magic or damage with units and training. In my opinion, obviously pick your own thing. Another thing to note about Norsca is that they are into monsters. If we glance up here at the units, you'll see that their infantry is decent. They've got a variety of everything. They have a massive amount of monsters. Now, some of these you cannot just outright build. For that, you need to go monster hunting. Obviously, you don't have this ability yet. This is unlocked through a technology, and then as you continue further on, you'll unlock various monster hunts, and these will give you access to the monstrous units of the Norsca. This is a pretty important mechanic because Norsca's real strength lies in its monsters late game. Although its infantry aren't bad, they're not going to win you the game. That's what the monsters are there for. Outside of that, Norsca's economy is rather bad, so you're going to be spending a lot of time raiding, pillaging, and sacking, which, of course, with the whole Viking ancestry behind the concept of this faction, that is something that you're really good at. So don't expect to necessarily make tons of money from your lands. You're going to get it through battles, raiding, and sacking settlements. You are the AI Wulfrik the Wanderer is considered to be a naval aggressor, meaning he will attack port provinces, even if there's even easier territories inland to conquer. This should give you guidance how to play him as a player, which is basically raid and pillage the coast to finance your armies and just slowly move in and occupy. Now, a change from Total Warhammer 1 and 2 is in Total Warhammer 3, the Norsca can occupy any province. Before they couldn't. Now they can occupy any province in the world, but they still are focused on ports and the coast. That's where this income really comes in handy. You get additional little bonuses around ports that you won't get inland. And the last major concept you need to be aware of is that the Norsca follow a very similar confederation mechanic to the Greenskins. So right now we're adding this guy to the army and we're going to go fight this battle. This guy is the leader of this faction. Once we defeat him, we will get a unique event. There we go. Obviously, we're going to win that. Obviously, we can sacrifice or kill. There's no replenishment here. But now, we get an event. Either we could execute him, kill him off, release him, get better relations with him. Why would you? Or we can confederate him. And so that's all we need to do to gain control of Norsca settlement factions is find their leader, Lamont Dahl in this case, or Wulfrik, kill him off, and you'll be able to take all their remaining lands. And this allows for Norsca to very rapidly confederate themselves. The other Norsca legendary lord, obviously the troll guy, is over here. When you beat him, you won't have an option to kill him. You can either just release him or confederate him. But you can very quickly subdue the full region of Norsca and even some of the northern Chaos Waste stuff really fast. It allows you to boom super fast. The downside is it makes it a little bit harder to defend because you're going to be at war with lots of people. Let's glance over here at the wharf. As you'll see, this wharf port gives excuse me, a large chunk of income, good growth, and casualty replenishment rate, which makes it a key center of your economy. After all, your base building here only gives you 300. Basically, as Norsca, you want every port you can get your hands on. It'll help you heal, rebuild faster, and in general is the only way you're going to be able to forge your armies. I would aim for, at minimum, trying to keep a neutral income, maybe losing a hundred or two a turn. You can go negative, but just be aware you have to make it up by raiding, pillaging, and everything else. So having a semi-neutral income is key for this faction, because you won't be able to afford buildings and upgrades from your owned income in your settlements by and large. Now, you've got some decent edicts. Cheaper recruitment costs and recruit capacity, always good if you're fighting. Slows the enemies down. It makes it harder for them to take you out through a siege. Better growth and construction. This is the one you're going to be on a lot towards the beginning of the game, outside if you're raising armies. And this one is just spread chaos corruption. Not something you're going to need up in Norsca, but once you move further south in the world, you're probably going to want to use it. And that's kind of it for the Norsca mechanics. Wulfrik can periodically get challengers that he needs to defeat here for the long campaign victory. This is important to finish off. Outside of that, they're a pretty simple faction in some sense. They can boom really fast. They can also collapse really fast if invaded from the south. Thankfully, the south has enough problems now that you're free to go wherever you'd like. The natural targets of expansion for both Norsca lords is south into the Empire in Kislev, but we'll go into that more later. Okay, let's move on to units. So we're going to use the building tree just so you see where the units come from. So the first thing you'll note is Norsca actually has a wide variety of military buildings, but they have military supports rather than like advanced military. You don't really need the advanced military. These buildings are your advanced military buildings. So first off, your base settlement here will give you access to Marauders. This, despite being a level 1 unit, is very solid. It will be able to beat most other factions' level 1 infantry in combat. Exceptions might be other Warriors of Chaos or even some of the Greenskin stuff. But it's solid. It's armored. It's weakly armored, but it's got a shield, which helps a lot. And like most of the Norsca units, you have this rage ability. The more time that your unit spends in melee, the more attack, leadership, and physical resistance it gains. This is huge. This means if this unit is fighting for a long time, it's only going to get stronger and more capable of killing the enemies. It's really good if you're fighting a faction with weak units like the Vampire Counts, Coast, or the Skaven, because you can just freely sit in melee without losing units. Gets a little bit trickier to use against factions that are actually actively killing your units efficiently. Um, just be aware that these stats get only better, and they're already decent on attack, less so on defense. Next one, Marauders, but with spears. Honestly, I tend to just take the normal Marauders over Marauder Spearmen, because these guys are more defensive, but they're less capable of killing, and they don't have a shield. Take this if you're going to go raid Bretonnia, though, because those knights, painful. The next one is your cavalry line here. You get Marauder Horsemen, which throw basically kind of like javelins at the enemy. You'd think this would be a bad unit. You'd be pretty right. It has its place in the early Norsca armies, though, as one of your first range units. Since you don't get archers, this is kind of a key thing, cavalry that shoots things. It does decent missile damage, low range, not a ton of ammunition, but it'll be enough. Just be aware it's going to get absolutely massacred by any archers in the game if they get a couple volleys off. If you're going to use it to fight other archers and stuff, you've got to have meat shields in the front line, marauders with shields in order to get there. Once they get there, though, they'll do pretty good. Their combat stance aren't bad either, and they do get this rage ability, giving them better melee stats the longer they're fighting. The next level, you get Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. Biggest difference here is their missiles do more damage and their armor piercing. This is very handy against factions like dwarves, which if you're the troll legendary lord for Norsca, you're going to be fighting them early on. Makes them pretty useful there. Overall, though, slightly less range, but better stats overall. It's pretty well a flat upgrade. More expensive though. Then you have the Marauder Chariots. This is a decent chariot unit. You get it pretty quickly. You throw it into the enemies, you disrupt them, they get a few kills, you pull it out, and charge again over and over and over. At the final level, you get the Marauder Horsemasters. This is kind of like your cav unit. It's not an amazing cav unit. Won't last up against Bretonnia and the others, even with its rage ability. But it does have increased missile strength as well, meaning it's a flat upgrade from throwing axes. And overall, it's a pretty nice skirmishing unit. You leave it on skirmish mode, it's going to outrun and kill most of the enemy units. It can fire while moving, so if it's being chased, it will attack the unit chasing it. Allows for a very nice skirmish style of play early on. Just again, be aware archers are going to destroy this. And the final one is your Marauder Ice Chariots. It applies frostbites on attack. It's decent in melee stats. Has range as well, which makes it a kind of an interesting hybrid thing, unlike this one, which is just pure combat. Overall, stats are better. You shoot for a while. If you get involved in combat, it can hold out for a decent time with a charge. It does give fear. That might actually be applied due to Wulfrik himself. I'm not entirely sure. Nope, that's just according to that unit applies fear. And it's a good unit. Definitely bring a couple of these in your early game to mid game armies. You won't be terribly disappointed, except for archers can beat it, although it does have much better armor than your other units you've been looking at so far. The next one here is your few ranged units. Your first one is hunters with javelins. These can be improved through technology, so they're not as bad as they appear. Slightly further range than your Marauder Horsemen. More damage. They're anti-large, which makes them surprisingly good at killing monstrous units or cav. Just be aware that if cav gets to them, they're just absolutely dead. But they can throw from behind your lines and do decent damage. The next level, we've got Marauder Hunters, which are a close quarters infantry, similar to the Empire's Pistoliers. Different unit, obviously. They're kind of throwing axes. Their armor piercing and shield breaker, meaning the enemies have a lot of trouble defending against this. They're pretty good at what they do, and then if they get in melee, they actually hold out. They're great frontline units to use prior to a battle, and if they do get caught out, they can survive long enough for your other infantry and monsters to come save them. Overall, solid unit. It's worth bringing a couple of them. You're still outranged by all the Norsca units, so a decrease of 10 range isn't too huge. Archers, of course, will cause you trouble. good against people like the dwarves. The next one, we've got the Marauder Berserkers, and this is where we get a slight change in the unit abilities from where we've been looking. They have Berserk rather than Rage. Gives them good physical resistance, good melee attack, and higher up puts them on Rampage, where they just kind of go nuts attacking any enemies nearby, which is fine because that's what this unit does. Decent hitting combat strength, bonus first infantry, good melee attack, obviously with the physical resistance, plus frenzy. They're going to hit hard, they're going to do good damage. The only thing that they're going to struggle with is armored units. Against base infantry like Skaven or Empire Swordsmen, they will tear through them like it's nobody's business. Now, if you're running across enemies with armor, you've got the Marauders with great weapons to make up for it. It's similar to your base Marauder unit, but is armor piercing without a shield. Still tier 1 infantry unit though, so be aware that even though you get it later along with some tier 2 infantry, it's still considered tier 1 and its stats reflect that. And finally, at the top, you've got your core infantry unit. You've got Marauders champions with or without great weapons. The biggest difference, if you don't have great weapons, they've got a shield and they're better at fighting non-armored enemies. If they are with great weapons, they don't have a shield, meaning they're weaker to archers, but they are armor piercing. Great against immobile factions like the dwarves or the dark elves at times. But be aware that the cost you make is if you take great weapons, archers will kill you. If you take this one, you won't be able to pierce armor as easily. On the other hand, combined with the rage stats, these are top line infantry units that can pretty much go toe to toe with most other top line infantry in the game. You get them reasonably early on, meaning you've got a period before the enemies get to tier 4 and tier 5 buildings and settlements where you're going to probably have some of the strongest infantry in the game to deploy against your enemies. Plus, Norsca tends to grow relatively quickly, meaning you can get up these levels pretty fast. The next one, we get our first monstrous unit, but these are beast packs. The first one is a pretty standard warhound, fast moving, decently hard hitting. Doesn't have that rage ability because it's not a human unit. It's worth bringing a couple of these early game to chase down archers and stuff. You can kind of substitute by using the Marauder Horsemen, but if they get attacked by archers, they're in trouble. Whereas these units, since they're pure melee and they're really fast, and they have some missile resistance, this is going to be your anti-archer unit at the beginning of the game, or anti-artillery in some cases. Further up, and there's an interesting jump here, you get into much stronger units. First one is your Skinwolf Werekin hero unit. This is a pretty standard melee unit. It is worth noting that it does have physical resistance to start, causes fear, and has this ability called Ruinous Flesh, meaning any allies in the area of it get a huge boost to armor and missile resistance. This means throw this guy in the middle of your army and all of a sudden archers aren't as big of a threat, and that armor is a wonderful boost to these guys, giving them over 100 armor, and it even works on your low-level Marauders, making them twice as tanky. The next one, we've got Skinwolves. This is a damage-dealing unit. It moves decently fast, physical resistance, frenzy, and it has regeneration. These are going to be one of your core damage dealers early on to mid-game. I've never been really disappointed while using them. The only thing to be aware of is archers, again, are a weakness if they can prevent you from getting to them. Luckily, this unit's fast, hits hard. The regeneration is really handy. It allows them to stay in combat a lot longer than their stats would indicate. The next one here is Norscan Ice Wolves, which is pretty much an upgrade from the Norscan Warhounds. Again, similar stats, speed, combat. This one does apply Frostbite, which means enemies have trouble running away from it. It's that much better at killing archers because once they rout, they're running away, but they're also slow, so you can easily finish them off. And if worse comes to worse, hitting an enemy unit with Frostbite allows you to run in, do damage, and then run away for a bit. Not that these guys should be used that way, but you can. And finally, at the top, you have Skinwolves that are armored. So you have Skinwolves before. The armored unit is just a flat upgrade. In all ways, it is a much stronger unit. That additional armor means it's going to take a lot less physical damage, and overall, it's just going to butcher anything in its path given time. It's the top tier infantry unit, slightly smaller size than you might like, but it makes up for that with doing damage. Now we get into the fun stuff. Here are the pure monstrous ones. So the first off, we have access to the Norscan trolls, and the ice trolls require this building, by the way. Um, the biggest difference here is the ice trolls apply frostbite. Normal trolls don't, have less combat stats, but are less expensive to maintain. Be aware that both of them have reasonably low leadership, so you need to have infantry around them to support them, or they'll try and run away. They're slow at running away, meaning that they tend to get killed, but they do regenerate, so they're actually better in melee combat than you'd expect. Just really have units around them. It is so easy to route a Norscan troll or ice troll early game. You can cast like one spell that hits 16 leadership on them. Doom and Darkness, I'm thinking about, and they're basically ready to run away even before the battle starts. They're also siege attackers, which is quite nice. Although with the recent patch, all legendary lords are siege attackers, so it's less important at the start of the game. But this will help your secondary armies attack walls and stuff. Further up, we have access to the Fimir Bale Fiends, which are your spellcasters. You have fire and you have shadows. Now, outside of it, it's still a decent fighting unit. Magical attacks and Sunder. Don't expect it to win in combat, though. It is designed to be a magic user. It does have additional evasion and speed, but the big thing it does is this ward save. It actually is pretty hard to kill at range, which is funny for a spellcaster. Just be aware that range is still a weakness to them, and they still will get shot from a distance. But decent spells, good bringing if you want to use magic. Pretty much a necessity if you want to use magic, actually. Further up, we have the Fimir Warriors, which are similar to the Skin Wolves, but even stronger in some ways. These ones here are not armor penetrating. These ones here are armor piercing. And they're armor sundering, meaning they weaken the enemy armor when attacking. Now, they don't have regeneration, but they do have more missile resistance. Overall, I like the Skin Wolves better myself, but Fimir Warriors have their place in the combat line as well. Overall, it's really up to you which one you prefer. One is anti-armor, the other is anti-infantry. So pick one depending on who you're fighting. The next one is you get a Feral Manticore. Total Warhammer 2, the spell that summoned this, the Curse of Amahir, I think it was really strong. Now it's a unit here that you can get with Norsca because it's not summonable like it was before, if I remember correctly. It's a great flying unit. It does decent damage. You can drop it on the enemy. It's actually somewhat resistant to missiles, meaning it's going to survive a little bit longer than most flying units. It can go on a rampage, though, and go nuts attacking things. So just be aware wherever you drop it, it might stay there. So dropping it at archers is great. Dropping it into elite infantry with the hope of doing a little bit of damage and flying away, not so much. And then finally at the top, we have access to the Frostworm. This is kind of like a flying dragon without the full-on any real range ability outside of it has the breath attack, but it's not a dragon. It's a worm. It's just a naming and slightly different design difference. Pretty strong, good magic missiles, good frostbite damage. Its combat stats are solid. It has magical attacks with frostbite, causes terror. It has an aura that weakens enemies' movements around it, which is quite nice because they can't ignore it and they can't run away from it because it is pretty speedy over land. Great unit, worth bringing to the end of the game. Couple Frostworms brought to a battle will ruin the enemy's day. Just don't leave them alone. Have infantry around them to support them, and they will do their job of killing everything in its path. And then also we have the Fimir Warriors with great weapons. If you were already doubling down into armor piercing and you wanted to do it even more, congratulations, this unit is made for you. More weapon strength, different melee attacks. Overall, weaker in actual combat stats, but is overall a stronger anti-armor unit. It's really up to you. I personally found not the world's greatest difference between the two. I preferred the actual ability to use an anti-armor unit versus infantry rather than doubling down into anti-armor damage. The next one, we got some more monsters. So this gives you mammoths. If you've ever watched Lord of the Rings and wish to deploy Oliphants to the battlefield, this is how you do it. It's a war mammoth. It's a giant elephant-similar unit. It's great in combat, charges into the enemy, does decent armor piercing, high weapon damage. Basically, anything it hits that's not a lord with a single swing is going to die. Um, just be aware its combat stats aren't necessarily the great. It can go on a rampage, and its leadership is not necessarily the highest, so keep some units around to support it. Worth bringing, though, just on the sheer fact it will soak up damage like nobody's business. You can get a feral one, and then you can get a war one. The difference between the war one is this is more like the Oliphant from Lord of the Rings. It has ammunition. It has a lot of ammunition, actually. Might be the highest ammunition I've seen in the game. I don't know if this is a bug or what. Low range, good damage. Outside of that, it's decent at fighting. Just be aware that if it's shooting, it's not going to go into melee combat unless you directly order it. I believe it's Alt to order a unit to do a melee attack if it's range. And then at the top, you've got the War Mammoth with a War Shrine. This is kind of interesting to bring because the Giver of Glory ability gives physical resistance to allies in an area. It stacks with their rage ability, giving them up to like 30 physical resistance or so. It increases with every nearby entity death, yours or the enemy, which is kind of cool. And it increases leadership. This is a great unit to stick near any trolls you might be deploying to keep them in the battle rather than running away. Gives terror and fear, decent combat stats. It's similar to the original Feral Mammoth. I still wouldn't necessarily throw it heavily into combat, but it's not going to die in melee that quickly. Be aware that lords and range heroes will kill it rather quickly, and if you do multiplayer, it is one of the top targets to snipe on your side just because of that physical resistance bonus. And we have access to the Norsca Giant. It's kind of like a troll, but there's only one of them. It's even bigger, hits harder, has much better leadership, so you don't have to worry as much about it routing. And it is a wall breaker, so it can just smash through walls during sieges rather than having to go through gatehouses. Great unit. Bring one or two to late game armies, and it will wreck enemies in its path. Just keep units around it so it doesn't get necessarily overwhelmed by a bunch of small enemies. And the last one to talk about is your Shaman Sorcerers. So the biggest difference here is these are wizards with actual combat stats. These are wizards without combat stats. They don't have the bonuses of Frostbite and Sundering Armor. It's up to you which you prefer. They've got very similar trees. You've got Shadows, Fire. You've got Fire, Metal, and Death. So they have their roles, but overall, 5 different things of magic is pretty nice. You can get rage on these if they're in melee combat. You don't get rage on these guys as far as I know. Nope. Meaning that long term, these guys are going to fight better in combat if you're throwing them into melee combat. Be aware that all of these have various different passive abilities, so using the ones you want can be very powerful. And since we're here, we'll talk about these. So this smithy is needed to build Marauder Chariots. This one up here, you need it for the War Mammoths. And Marauder Champions with great weapons and the Ice Wolves. So basically, you're going to have to build this to unlock these top ones. It gives recruit rank. This one over here gives casualty replenishment and allows you to recruit frost worms and stuff as well. Overall, you're going to want to build these. Increased recruitment strength, more armies to recruit, and cheaper, all good. You can't combine all of these in a single province, so you're going to have 2 different capital settlements if you want access to all the units and these upgrades. Now, Norsca capital settlements actually have a decent garrison. Melee defense and leadership while under siege means if you build one of these on a capital settlement, it is a lot harder for the AI to take it in this game than it was in some of the others. You actually have a defense. I know, shocking. For minor settlements, just be aware that you don't get walls, unlike the other one, but you still can provide a half-decent garrison to fight with. Now, outside of that, that is most of the units. Obviously, you unlock more from the monster hunts. I'm not going to go into that. I'll let you figure that out yourself. Just be aware you have to research the technology to unlock them. You have to go there, fight a battle to get the units. They're not necessarily the easiest of battles, so don't rush them super early. Okay, let's talk the economy. So I've already mentioned a little bit about it earlier, but it bears reminding. Norsca outside of port settlements is poor. Your base economy building here, even fully upgraded, will only give you 300. There's really no way to stack it. It's just that's the way it is. Now, all told though, if you get a slaver's camp at a fully upgraded port, you can be making over 1,100 from a port settlement. Of course, it's hard to defend port settlements since you don't get the whole walls thing. Um, but that's going to be your source of money passively. Now, Norsca has another building here, which is this loot pile, which first off is a growth building, so you're going to want to build it early on as well. But it gives income from post-battle loot, meaning if you fight a battle nearby, you're going to make more money from winning the battle. This goes along with Norsca's whole obsession with raiding and pillaging. Each lord here also has access to stuff like sacking settlements, and generally you get a lot of money from actually fighting. Some of your technologies double down on some of this. Marauders of the West and East gets plus 50 income from sacking settlements, depending on where you are when you're sacking them. Overall, most of your money is going to come from sacking settlements, but it is important to note you can generate at least a passive income from ports, meaning you want as many of them as you can get. It used to have bonuses faction-wide for raiding and pillaging. It doesn't anymore. Those were considered to be too strong. Now, the Norsca also have the standard anti-Skaven Rift building, which isn't absolutely amazing. You're probably not going to need it unless you're fighting a Nurgle faction, but Nurgle factions actually like you a little bit because you're for chaos. And then it's got one other building that's worth mentioning here. This is your Ruinous Altar. This is how you get public order, which Norsca struggles with a little bit, and it also spreads corruption, and at the max level unlocks your higher level lord ranks and gives obviously access to these units as well. Can be worth throwing down one of these in a capital settlement. You also get additional control when you're fighting nearby enemies, meaning as long as you're fighting, your lands are at peace. Once you stop fighting, or you destroy the enemy, or the war moves away from your borders, you will have public order problems. Kind of goes with Norsca's whole thing about being ready to fight at the drop of the hat and wanting to expand around the world. However, that does have a very nice tie-in with the Norscans' habit of raiding, taking a settlement, and expanding from there. It allows you to land, take over, say, like Marienburg, which is a great target to sack early game. Drop one of those public order buildings there. Since we'll be at war with everyone around you, that settlement, by and large, will stay very loyal to you. There are certain areas around the map that have special buildings and stuff that you can build off of. There's not a ton of them, but you'll find them. I'm not going to go into all of them. Suffice to say, they're pretty useful for Norsca. They used to be even better. They used to be like dedicated Norsca havens with insane garrisons. That's been reduced a bit. So overall, focus on your ports, focus on raiding and pillaging. Try and get these passive buildings if you can. Passive income is better, in my opinion, than raiding and pillaging income just because you are always getting it. Plus, if you lose your army, your economy doesn't just die in 4 or 5 turns when you try and raise a new army. Or spend time moving from one area to pillage to the next. You're going to be raising a lot of land to get these allegiances. If I remember, raising a settlement only gives you like 4 with the various gods. So to get to 100, you're gonna have to raise and pillage like 25 settlements. It takes a while. And that is the Norsca economy. Let's move on to technology. So the Norsca technology tree is divided into 3 different trees, one that is noticeably a lot bigger than the other. So the first one over here, we'll do the 2 small ones first. This is going to boost your infantry marauder units. Decreased recruitment, better combat strength, better armor, more ammunition and missiles, better attack and defense for all your Marauder units. This is huge. It's probably one of the first techs you want to snag. Better speed and charge bonus for your cav, and then better melee defense and armor for your cav units and chariots. Pretty straightforward, simple tree. Getting this Butcher's Captives means your level 1 Marauder units can fight usually most factions level 2 units. It makes your strong units even stronger. Just be aware that the benefit of this tech falls the longer you take to get it, just because other people's infantry will catch up to you. This other one down here is all about your monsters. Unlocks your first monster hunt. I don't recommend this for a first tech, just because you're not going to have the time or the army to go on your monster hunt for a while. But if you're using Warhounds and Ice Wolves, this will give you a benefit as well. This one unlocks level 2, makes recruitment of monsters cheaper. Level 3, faster recruitment since they take several turns. Up here, you've got bonuses to your Skin Wolves, Ice Wolves, and Norsca Warhounds. Finally, you get defense for them. Then up here, you've got recruitment and charge bonus for your Wolves and Famir Warriors. So if you're going to use your monstrous units, this is the tree you need to go down to make them even stronger. It's not going to make them as strong as the bonuses you get from up here, but they're already stronger to begin with, so it's a nice icing on top. Over here, this is where you're going to get the vast majority of your bonuses from. First one, leadership for Marauders. Nice. Corpulent sails, move further, longer hulls. You're immune to high seas attrition, which is really nice because you're going to want to be raiding overseas. More income from sacking. Your Marauders have vigor loss reduction. Doesn't actually say the percentage. If it's like all the others, it's 15. Not exactly sure. Champions of War, income from battles. Your Marauders get better ranks. Combined, this tree with this tree, your Marauders are going to be significantly stronger. Now, you've got 3 different options here. You've got Marauders of the West, which says basically I'm going to go after the Bretonnian, Southern Realm, and Dwarves, which is not near Norsca. So unless you're going to sail for a long distance to do so, this is not the tree to go down first. But if you do, once you start fighting Bretonnia, there's a bonus. If you fight Talea, there's a bonus. If you fight the Dwarves, there's a bonus. Be aware, each of these do provide a bonus, except for the Bretonnia ones, regardless if you're fighting them. So Talea still gives you income post-battle, even if Talea is dead. This one, vigor loss for Cav. Finally, if you occupy certain settlements like Corone, you get a massive boost to trade income, growth, and charge. Over here, if you take Miragliano, you get research and upkeep. If you're going to go down this tree and go invade that area, this is a big one. Upkeep is huge. Further down, if you can get to Karaz Akarik, which is quite a distance inland, you'll get a boost of 50% income from all buildings. Basically, between these two, if you get it, or all 3, you'll have a huge boost to your income. You usually can support 1 to 2 more armies. Be aware, though, that these are capital, high-level settlements, so it's not the easiest to occupy them. Honestly, Miragliano is probably going to be the easiest one to take, even though Corone is closer to your borders. Further down, this is Raiders of the East. Empires, Kislev, Vampire Counts, and Greenskins. Offhand, Wulfrik the Wanderer is a bit more into the Marauders of the West. I think it's Throgg, the Troll Lord of the Norsca, is more Raiders of the East. But Wulfrik can also go after the Empire too, so it's not hard and fast one way or the other. So this gives a bonus while fighting empires, plus cheaper Marauder upkeep is not a bad tech to snag on its own. Just be aware, it's going to take you 41 turns to get here. Further down, if you get Altdorf, weapon strength, spell resistance, and vigor loss reduction. This is if you're fighting the vampire count. That plus 5 melee defense is huge since they're purely a melee faction. Over here, Greenskins. It's great for Marauders when you're fighting Greenskins. Plus, Barren Wasteland attrition is really handy. This is going to allow your infantry to kind of go toe-to-toe with the Greenskins, since even though your stats won't equal the Greenskins, the physical resistance will. Men of Ice, if you're fighting Kislev, which with Throgg you're definitely going to. Charge bonus, experience, and leadership is great. Further down, if you take Drakenhof, you get a huge casualty replenishment and more Skin Wolves, and enemies struggle against your faction. Secrets of Gork and Mork, if you beat the Greenskins, you'll get more magic, and you'll become immune to climate, sea, corruption, and storm attrition. This is huge. If you can, getting to Black Crag and taking this. Obviously, if you got into Black Crag, you're probably also going for Karaza Karek. But this basically means you can wander anywhere in the world with no trouble. And further down, True Northman, if you take Kislev, reduction in casualties from all attrition. Obviously, if you get Gork and Mork, less of a thing, but you're going to have a better chance of getting Kislev, makes you immune to psychology, and gives you the very odd unit mass. Plus, this just means when you charge into them, especially if you're using a chariot, you're going to knock the enemies back more and scatter them. Scavengers of the New World, and I expect this to be divided as well in the future. This is all your Total Warhammer 2 factions. This pretty much covers Total Warhammer 1 factions. Lizardmen, Dark Elves, High Elves, Skaven, Tomb Kings, Vampire Coast. Plus you get a control out of all of these. Again, it's the sacking that you really care about. I'm not going to go into too much of these. Suffice to say they have bonuses, and if you complete them all, the better. This one's pretty good if you get Nagaron. Income from a raiding can become substantially useful, especially if the enemies can't spare an army to go kill you. This one, Secrets of the Court for Lothran, is almost neglectable, just because you're probably not going to be spamming tons of hero actions. You're pretty much a straightforward charge in, raid them, and then leave faction. But this will help you undermine the enemies. Secret of the Ancients. The upkeep for Mammoths is really handy, but you have to get all the way over to kill Matsamunde. But the physical resistance on Marauders you get from this tech almost pays off completely. Over here, Anti-Skaven. This one gives you Desert Attrition. I'm not sure if these two combine, because this is immune to climate. This one is Desert. I suspect this one's better. I haven't fully tested it all. What can I say? Can't spend all my time on all the mechanics. Overall, and then if you're going to fight, the Vampire Coast is great. But on the other hand, it also gives you a 10% casualty replenishment rate, which is huge. If you get all the replenishment techs, you don't need to go Crow. Instead, you can go Serpent for the bonus to upkeep. But it's up to you. You max out at 50% replenishment, and you can get more than that as Norsca. Just be aware of that. You can't heal more than half a unit's hit points in any turn. Further down, Secrets of the Deep. If you take Harkon's Capital, more post-battle loot, weapon strength, and leadership. Secrets of Past Dynasties. This one is very handy. It basically makes all your lords immortal. So they don't have to be rank 20. Instead, you can rest assured that sending them out to fall in battle is in fact a safe thing to do. This makes you immune to sandstorm attrition, which you're only really going to see fighting the Tomb Kings anyway. Secrets of the Under Empire is huge. Movement range is great. Corruption is nice. More importantly, the recruitment cost is lowered. You can rocket around the map with cheap armies and corrupt things. Further on, this has been added to help you with Cathay, control, sacking, bonus while fighting them. And finally, if you occupy their capital, you get control, leadership aura, and tactician. This is honestly a very odd thing, but it gives reload skill and melee defense. It's taken straight from the Cathay tree. I fully expect this end to be reworked at some point. Overall, the faction needs a rework, but that is the tech so far. It's customizable to who you're fighting. It's kind of similar to Bretonia in that fact. It's quite fun. It just is a very slow tree without obvious upfront bonuses. Okay, let's talk about the starting lords and their starting situations. That didn't make sense, but whatever. So, first one is Wulfrik the Wanderer. He's pretty much the iconic guy of the Norsca. He's big, he's brawny, he's the eternal challenger. His job is to go out. He made a vow to the Chaos Gods to fight strong enemies, and he will always be challenging enemies. Covered in Skulls is a very powerful melee fighter, and his faction is pretty much the default Norsca one. So, his Gift of Tongues, Marauders are cheaper, Marauders attack better. This means his Marauder units are significantly powerful in melee combat and are only stronger than Throgs in melee combat. Overall, he's pretty simple. You use lots of Marauders backed up by monsters to fight with him. He starts here with the Monolith. As you saw, we add a hero to the Lord. We fight the initial battle. We confederate them. And we have the Troll Fjord. Now, we don't have any other enemies over here. Instead, we have to turn back inland and attack this guy. Now, Lamont Dahl If you can kill this lord, it's great. But the problem is he tends to get killed by Varg, in my experience. Then you have to invade and kill El. He's not particularly hard to track down. Once you do that, you control the vast majority of Norsca. You can go after the scalings to the south, or they'll come after you. And then once you've consolidated all of Norsca, you could go north and go after other Norsca tribes. I recommend at that point you finish off Throgg and the remainder of the Norsca realms, kill off the dwarves and Kraka Drak if you haven't. Then you can go south into Kislev, or you leave Throgg alone and he'll deal with it. Or once you've consolidated the initial 3 Norsca following you, you could launch on a campaign to wipe out the faction here, Bellicor, if I remember correctly, and then go after Bretonnia and that area down there. It's really up to you where you go. The key is to try and confederate as much of the Norsca as you can. Otherwise, you're always going to have enemies on your side. If I had to pick, I'd leave scaling alive as long as possible so that the enemies you're fighting down here don't necessarily see, ooh, I can rush across the coast and raid and pillage their settlements. Again, remember that you don't have walls in these settlements, which means it's rather difficult to defend. In fact, Norsca itself, its capital settlements, doesn't have walls, even though this does say it is a wall thing. I misspoke earlier when I called it you get a wall, because you don't, but you get a building called Wall of Carcasses rather than actually defensive wall. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they call it a wall building. It should be called a garrison. But you can make them pretty strong. They won't resist any legendary lord armies, but a standard lord army they will be able to beat. Stick that definitely in all of your settlements. You don't want to lose your Norsca homeland if you can help it. But you should mainly be on offense, so you won't have an army left at home really to defend with. So let's look at actually Wulfrik himself. So we already saw his faction traits, his actual lord effects. His reinforces from further away, which is kind of nice if you've got 2 armies nearby. And his entire army causes fear, which is great for reducing leadership and routing enemies. Particularly good against Skaven and Bretonnia, because you will rout their peasants and their low-level Skaven slaves with barely any combat. Falls off later on as you fight enemies with better leadership. Now, Wulfrik himself is a very powerful fighter. He's a top-tier fighter in the game. He's got great shielded blocking ability, so he's hard to kill at range, which is nice. Plus, he's got missile resistance. He's got a pretty standard blue line here. The big difference is Norse Resilience is a front-line ability here that you can pick at level 2. I recommend you pick it. Further down, once you get to this next section, you can boost it again for a total of 9 replenishment early on, which is huge. He also has Devourers of Flesh, which strengthens his Skin Wolf Werekins, makes them much stronger when you recruit them. And finally, Spawn of Chaos is not the cheaper upkeep like others do. It, in fact, gives your army experience per turn, and at that, a pretty substantial number. Fueled by War is obviously worth snagging when you can, just because Norse economy isn't the best. Savage skills is huge, recruit rank higher. All told, you probably don't even need to go after Lightning Strike for some time because all the others in this category are more important. Lower down here, it's really up to you which ones you pick. Swelling of Doom will get you to higher settlements faster, but I tend to like Serve or Die because you're going to be recruiting quite a few units throughout a campaign. They'll save you a good chunk of money. If you're sacking lots of settlements, this is a nice little boost. It's not as large as your technology though. But if you're having money problems, it's worth snagging. His red line here, I would probably ignore till later on. It's worth noting at the end, you have a choice between Fight or Die or Stand and Die. Seeing how the Norsca units later on have good melee defense, I'd probably pick the melee attack. So Fight or Die could be pretty powerful as well. Not something to pick early on. You could make a detour into here quickly to grab this Fearsome Warriors and boost the Marauders that are cheaper for Wulfrik even higher. Now, he starts off with this unlocked, which is kind of unusual for a lord. This is Seafang, based off his horrible flying longship. It's a spell. You cast it, charges in, does decent damage. A little bit hard to aim because of how long it takes to actually appear, but gives Wulfrik a nice damage army for his initial battles. make sure to use it every battle because it doesn't cost Winds of Magic. It's got a pretty standard yellow line here. I would neglect this in favor of the other lines first because he's already got good combat stats, but later on you can make him an almost one-man army. Now, up top is Wulfrik's unique line. First off, Hunter of Champions that he can upgrade later on to, he just upgrades it. This first one weakens a lord or a hero, gives them less armor, less melee defense, and makes them move slower. Basically, you can charge at them, and you'll have superior combat stats for the first 24 seconds of fighting them, which honestly is all Wulfrik needs to kill. There's very few lords that can survive in long-term combat with Wulfrik, especially if he brings a high-level Norsca melee unit or a monster to help him fight. Further up, Juggernauts of the Zarl. This gives Worm Piercer. It means all your Javelin units, which you have a fair amount of, do improved anti-large damage, making him great at hunting monstrous units. And you get a bonus versus large on a lot of your Spearmen, Cav, and Hunters. Makes him a lot better at fighting Cav or monsters. Further down, World Walker boosts Sea Fang, makes you immune to all sea-based attrition, which is nice. You can get it through tech, but you get it earlier here, and you move further. And you get 5 casts of Sea Fang, which of course you should always use when they come off the 90-second cooldown. Gift of Tongues is quite nice, reduces enemy leadership and causes terror. All told, just having Wulfrik on a battle is 13 less leadership for the enemy on a offhand. Can be very powerful. As I said, versus Bretonnia or the Skaven. Cheaper upkeep, better construction time, allows him to build up his large capital settlements much faster. And this one, casualty replenishment rate for this Lord. Wulfrik will always heal half his health every turn. And now Hunter of Champions prevents the enemy from moving, and Wulfrik will fight constantly. However, it is important to note, and I will mention this, Wulfrik is not unbreakable. He does have leadership. Honestly, I think he should be given Unbreakable as the Eternal Challenger, but that's just me. His other stuff, he's got this Fervent Creatures, which makes his Skin Wolves significantly stronger. He's all about the Marauders and Skin Wolves, if you haven't already noticed. Less about monsters, but that's Throgg. He'll also get a War Mammoth later on. It's kind of up to you if you want to use it. Overall, it is a debuff to his combat stats, although it is a boost to his health. If you really want him to kill more lords, leaving on a Norsca Warhorse is not a bad idea. The other two weaken his combat stats. Obviously, you can make it up through the yellow line. If you want to make him anti-lord, I'd just leave him on a Warhorse at most. If you want to make him anti kind of everything, but less effective at killing lords, a War Mammoth is the way to go. He also gets this Eye of the Gods, which you should take at some point. Boosts his weapon damage. All told, he gets it up 30 or so %. Voice of the Dark Gods increases dominating presence leadership, but is not really crazy out of the way. And this is a nice missile resistance, which solves his only real weakness, missiles. However, he is still fully vulnerable to spell effects, and if you're fighting him, just blast him with spells and he will go down pretty quickly. He's got a quest, the Sword of Torgvold. Control in all provinces. This solves any control issues you might have as the Norsca, more income, more combat, and it gives him a boost of 90% weapons damage for 44 seconds. Combined with his Hunter ability, you can wipe out almost any lord in the game in combat. And that is Wulfrik about the Skin Wolves and the Marauders. Less about the monsters doesn't mean you still don't want to use them. On to the other legendary lord. Okay, here we are as Throgg, the other Norsca legendary lord. They might add another one later. I kind of hope they do. In the meantime, Throgg starts up here near the Altar of Spawns Monolith of Flesh. It's got your pretty standard fight a battle, conquer a settlement, confederate faction that Wulfrik started with. You get a little bit more land from the Confederation than Wulfrik does, depending on how fast you do it. Now, be aware you have several enemies and people who will declare war on you early on. The Dwarves of Krokadrak over here hate you and will probably be your first major target. Taking them out takes a little bit of cunning, ambushing around Krokadrak, and then sneaking in and taking it while their army is outside of it. That's just kind of the way it goes. If you take a while to do it, there is a chance, and I've seen it happen, that the dwarves will sneak down here to help it and kill off Clan Mulder. If they do, that's actually kind of a benefit for you, because then you can take that settlement for your own later on. Um, Overall, though, it's got a less interesting start than Wulfrik. You're going to end up at war probably with Sarl and down here, the Ecstatic Legion. It's worth killing them off if you can, and then if you want, you can go after Wulfrik and expand west and take over all of the Norsca Scandinavian knockoff region. Now, you are pretty much designed to go after Kislev down here, or even up here if you want to go take out Boris Ursus. Honestly, you can kind of ignore Ursus. He tends to die anyway and progress south. Taking Kislev and Erengrad and Prague are your big goals. Be aware that they are heavily defensive settlements and the AI will fight to the death to defend them. But Throgg is a siege attacker at the beginning, and with his army, if you can rush in and sneak it, you can wipe it out. To be fair, Wulfrik's a siege attacker too. Throgg just looks way more impressive on the battlefield. You want to sneak in, take their capital, their 3 major settlements, and then after that, Kislev falls rather quickly without those. You might need a second army to take one of those settlements, depending if they put a garrison in them and how developed it is. After that, you could freely continue out here, finishing off the other minor Kislevites and confederating more of the Norsca. Overall, you're the eastern one, Wulfrik's kind of the western one. However, getting non-aggression with Wulfrik is kind of hard. They don't tend to get along. In this case, I can get a non-aggression pact with him, and I would probably take it if I can. He'll cause enough trouble that he should keep the enemies off of you for some time, allowing you to solely focus on Kislev and the dwarves at the beginning. This does mean that you are probably going to want to take Raiders of the East over Marauders of the West, which will get you more money from fighting these enemies over here. It is worth, if you want to, you could theoretically snag these Marauders of the West and Ravaging of the Dwarves. If for some reason you're struggling with Crocodrock, you really shouldn't be. Now, Throgg himself has some very interesting stuff. First off, he's all about the monstrous units. His troll units and ice troll units are cheaper and they have physical resistance. Doesn't solve their leadership problem though, but makes them significantly stronger in melee combat. 15 resistance plus regeneration plus the damage. All you have to do is keep units around them so they don't rout from leadership and they tend to kill things. Throgg himself is a monstrous ruler, control in his province, which is honestly a useless thing. All his units in his army are immune to attrition and he spreads corruption. This means you can freely wander all over the map with him without any problem. I think even stuff like sandstorms from the Tomb King and the raiding from the Lizardmen doesn't affect him. It's pretty powerful. It means his main army is always going to be powerfully on the offense without getting weak. You can get to the enemies and kill them. The only thing you have to watch out for is multiple battles and healing up. But thankfully, you get the Norscan resilience early on, same thing as Wulfrik, and unnatural healing. It's the exact same blue tree. Masters of the Fen and Spawn of Chaos combined with savage skills. You'll have powerful lords, cheap army, fast replenishment, and highly recruited ranked armies. I recommend Serve or Die if you can, just because as Throgg you want more trolls and monsters, and they are expensive. Further up here, he starts just like with Wulfrik. Currently, with an ability unlocked, he vomits on people. It does a lot more damage you'd expect. It's a little bit hard to aim, but if you hit an enemy lord with it, it can do some significant damage, or even any enemies. Up top, he's King of Trolls, more control for his province, better leadership for his trolls. This means they're less likely to rout. Still doesn't solve their low leadership problem, but helps quite a bit. Also solves his Fimir and Skinwolves upkeep and leadership problems as well, meaning everything he has of monsters will fight better and for longer. Further, Primordial Might, more vomits, stronger weapon strength. His weapon strength is already high. This boosts it even higher. Mutant Regeneration gives regeneration to the Fimir units and Wolfskin and Trolls if they didn't already have it. It's in generally just a stronger regeneration one. Horrible regeneration, though, unlike default regeneration, can resurrect dead entities within the unit. So if a troll dies, if you leave the troll and unit alone long enough, that entity will stand up and heal. It's a very nice bonus. It makes you kind of like the vampire counts and the Tomb Kings, in that you can get units back on the battlefield. It does not apply to your Fimir units, but it does work on your trolls and skinwolves. And it also adds a nice missile resistance to your trolls, meaning one of their weaknesses of being shot from range is no longer really a problem. It still is the best strategy, but it's a lot lower. Monstrous Fiends, Frenzy on all your trolls, and increase melee defense. Again, boosting the trolls and skinwolves and Fimir units. They will fight harder, they will defend better, all told really good. This one is Dread Retainers. This will unlock a variety of ancillaries that you can use to boost ones. There's some that are very powerful for trolls and other units as well. Make sure you use them, make sure you deploy them. I'm not sure if they can get stolen by the enemy. I've never had them stolen. Just be aware that you have a limited number of them. It's worth snagging. Finally, up here, Age of Beast. This is huge. Means all your Wolves, Fimir, and Skinwolf units will basically be recruited in one turn. He has now Chilling Aura, so he slows enemies around him, and he causes terror. Then, of course, his yellow line is pretty standard. All told, you can make him hit harder than almost any standard lord in the game. He doesn't have the crazy combat stance of Wulfrik or the ability to solo lords, but he doesn't really need to. He already is pretty strong in combat. He again has fight or stand and die. Really up to you which one you're going to use. I would tend a little bit more towards stand and die with him because you've already got strong tanky units. Making them even more tanky is cool. On the other hand, offense will do more damage. And outside of that, he's got all the pretty standard other ones as well. He has a quest, the Wintertooth Crown. It's kind of a weird one in the sense that it makes you have the ability to make enemies in an area unbreakable. If you use this, you can force your troll units with their low leadership to stay in combat a lot longer. And overall, just makes him a stronger fighter, cheaper army, better at intercepting dwarves and Skaven, and spreads more corruption. He's kind of an interesting character. He can be pretty powerful in combat himself. Overall, the Norsca lords and heroes are all better fighters than the average southerners. Enjoy playing him. You're going to use a lot of trolls. You'll use a lot of the skinwolves and stuff. Is very powerful left alone. Just make sure you are aware that the trolls and Norse controls are still expensive to maintain, more than a marauder army. So early on, use marauders, back them up by trolls. Later on, add more trolls. Never go pure troll. It's a troll build. It's not good in my experience. You want some units around them so that their leadership is not isolated and stuff. Mammoths are pretty powerful with him, although he doesn't get any bonuses towards them. Overall, one of your first goals should be get Krakadrak in general, because it will get you Diamond Camp, which will get you more resources and better relations with the other Norsca. You can trade with the other Norse, but the only one you're ever really going to get along with half decently is Wulfrik, and maybe some of the more northern ones under the domination of the Chaos faction. Be aware, the Chaos faction, even though they don't hate you, they still might attack you, meaning you may have to turn north and take over the Chaos Wastes as well. Thankfully, you can do so. You inhabit almost every climate except magical forests, deserts, and oceans. It's a very powerful faction for occupying things. Overall, he's probably one you're probably going to want to go Champion of the Serpent on, since his regeneration is already pretty high. And overall, enjoy. I like him better than Wulfrik in my opinion, because who doesn't want to deploy trolls and wolves to the battlefield over boring normal marauder units? And anyway, that is it for this guide. If you've watched this far, please do leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe and ring the bell. And tell me what I've done wrong with this faction, because I'm sure there's something. I hope you enjoyed it, though. Hopefully it helps you play better. And I hope to see you in another video, guide, or a Let's Play. Again, I'm Lord Forwind. Thank you guys all for watching. Bye for now.